Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, I am absolutely thrilled to get into today's topic because we are stepping way outside the cozy climate-controlled data center and we're walking straight out onto the plant floor. We're exploring the high-stakes, entirely uncompromising world of operational technology, or OT security. You see, when you're dealing with critical infrastructure, heavy manufacturing, or power grids, we aren't just talking about protecting a spreadsheet or, keeping credit card numbers safe. We are talking about defending the actual cyber-physical systems that literally keep our modern world running. And today, we're going to break down exactly how to build a defense program that actually holds up in the field when everything is on the line.
Okay, let's dive into this. To truly wrap our heads around OT security, we have to fundamentally shift our mindset. In a typical IT environment, a breach is a digital crisis, right? It's bad, but it's digital. But in an operational technology environment, a breach is a physical hazard. We really have to stop and ask ourselves, what happens when a misconfigured set point on a control system isn't just a computer glitch, but something that can cause a massive explosion, an environmental disaster, or even kill someone? That is the absolutely critical difference here. We are dealing with systems where a line of code translates directly into raw kinetic energy.
So the consequences between the two? They literally couldn't be more different. An IT attack traditionally leads to lost data, privacy violations, financial hits. It hurts a company's wallet and reputation for sure, but it's contained within the digital realm. An OT breach, however, rips right through the computer screen and into the real world. We're talking physical destruction, loss of chemical containment, massive equipment damage, and the catastrophic loss of human life. The stakes are instantly maxed out, which means our standard defense frameworks, they have to be completely re-engineered from the ground up.
To ground us, let's look at the blueprint of our cyber-physical reality. This schematic perfectly captures that exact moment when the digital collides with the physical. Think of it like this. You have your digital IT commands on one end and a physical actuator valve on the other. This isn't just some theoretical network diagram we're talking about. This represents a literal pipe in a facility. It illustrates how a digital command sent as packets over a network physically turns a massive steel valve to regulate flow in the real world. That is the exact translation point we have to protect.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the precise sequence of events. Trace the path with me here. It starts with an IT command, moves through the data process, and enters the control logic. But right before it hits the physical impact, that actual actuator valve, it must pass through the safety layer. This is absolutely crucial. If a malicious actor can manipulate that control logic and bypass that specific safety check, they can force a valve open when it is absolutely supposed to be closed. And honestly, that is the core anatomy of a cyber-physical attack.
So how on earth do we defend against that? Well, a really common mistake is picking just one cybersecurity framework and hoping for the best. But combining these two specific powerhouses, that's the true secret. On one side, we have NIST Special Publication 800-82. It is an incredible descriptive guidance document, honestly, perfect for overall program management and high-level governance. On the other side, we have IEC 62443, which is a highly prescriptive engineering standard. It gives you the rigorous, down-in-the-weeds technical implementation details. Think of NIST as your management skeleton and IEC 62443 as your engineering muscle. Put them together and you create an airtight, robust defense. A foundational concept you get from IEC 62443 is security levels, or SLs. Now, these aren't just arbitrary severity ratings. They define the actual capability of the threat actor you need to be able to withstand. It scales all the way from SL1, which covers casual or unintentional mistakes, up to SL2 for intentional attacks using pretty simple means. But for critical OT environments, we are looking strictly at SL3 and SL4. SL3 means you are defending against sophisticated, highly motivated actors using OT-specific tools, usually gunning for your safety instrumented systems. And SL4, that is nation-state level. We're talking extended resources, massive budgets, and zero-day exploits. Knowing your required SL dictates your entire defense posture.
Adversaries rarely just magically drop straight into a physical process, right? Let's move to and see how this builds using the System of Systems dependency graph. This maps out how a modern cyber attack actually progresses. It's essentially an anatomical study of an attack, visualizing the specific layers an adversary has to traverse, moving from a standard corporate IT network all the way down into the critical physical machinery.
Picture this exact downward pivot. Step 1. The attacker compromises corporate credentials, usually just a simple phishing email on the regular IT network. Step 2. They pivot through a poorly configured IT/OT firewall, right into the industrial DMZ.
Step 3. Now they deploy malware into the supervisory network. Step 4. The attacker starts pushing unauthorized changes to the programmable logic controllers, the PLCs, down in the control network. And finally, the nightmare scenario, Step 5. They disable the safety instrumented system, the SIS, creating utterly unsafe conditions that result in physical destruction. It is a terrifyingly logical step-by-step progression. As attackers move through those deeper layers, they basically cause two distinct types of damage: loss of view and loss of control. Loss of view happens in the supervisory layer. Let's say malware encrypts the critical human-machine interface data. The operators are now totally blinded. They literally don't know what the physical machines are doing. Loss of control, though, happens deeper down, right in the control network. This is when an attacker actually alters the PLC alarm thresholds or the core logic itself. The operators might still be able to see the screen, but they can no longer steer the ship. Both scenarios are incredibly dangerous. It's really important to differentiate the threat actors here too. Casual attackers, they rely on ransomware and phishing. They're usually just in it for the money, causing collateral damage by hitting IT systems that happen to overlap with the OT side. But sophisticated attackers, they have a vastly different motivation. They specifically target and disable safety functions as a prerequisite to causing physical damage. They aren't looking for a quick payout. They are looking to break things in the real world. And if you're sitting there thinking this is purely theoretical, well, the updated NIST SP 882 standard highlights the modern OT threat landscape to prove it absolutely isn't. We have seen real-world malware explicitly engineered for this. Triton, which is also known as Trisys, was designed specifically to compromise safety instrumented systems. Indestroyer, too, directly targeted the power grid. Pipedream, or InController, is an insanely capable modular attack framework that can target multiple major ICS platforms using native industrial protocols. These threats are active, they are well documented, and they are highly capable. And this brings us to our ultimate countermeasure, the defensible cyber-physical architecture. And this brilliantly illustrates how we distill the massive, complex requirements of both NIST and IEC 62443 down to three foundational pillars of defense: visibility, geometry, and safety. If you can master these three pillars, you can build a security program that actually works out there on the plant floor. So let's break them down one by one.
Pillar 1, visibility. You have to know your baseline.
Listen, you absolutely cannot protect what you don't know exists. It's that simple. But how you get that visibility in OT matters immensely. In IT, you just run an active network scan and call it a day. In OT, active scanning is a massive safety hazard. Pinging fragile legacy PLCs can overwhelm their memory, crash the controller entirely, and trigger spurious, incredibly costly plant shutdowns. Instead, the mandatory standard here is passive discovery. By analyzing network traffic without injecting a single packet yourself, it's completely safe. And astonishingly, passive discovery typically detects 46 to 78% more devices than what's written on a facility's manual spreadsheet. It uncovers forgotten modems, rogue Wi-Fi routers, and hidden attack vectors you never knew you had.
Pillar 2. Geometry. Enforce your boundaries. This pillar is entirely about controlling the flow of information across your network infrastructure. To do this, we use the core IEC 62443 methodology known as zones and conduits. A zone is basically a logical grouping of physical assets that share the exact same security requirements, like grouping all of your most critical safety systems together in one bucket. A conduit is the explicitly defined communication path between those zones. Every single conduit must be documented, tightly controlled, and aggressively protected. So, the crucial point is exactly how you enforce those boundaries. You always start with a default deny posture. Literally nothing communicates unless it is explicitly allowed. You implement strict, highly specific firewall rules. And for your absolute most critical choke point conduits, you use unidirectional flows powered by hardware data diodes. These physically prevent traffic from flowing in the wrong direction. Think about it. A software firewall can be hacked, it can be misconfigured, but a data diode enforces security through the unhackable laws of physics, physically preventing catastrophic compromises from ever reaching your critical core.
Pillar 3, safety, because safety always transcends IT.
In the world of OT, safety is the ultimate trump card. Look at this priority hierarchy. Number 1, above all else, is human safety. Number 2 is fault tolerance, meaning the ability of the system to fail safely without blowing up. Number 3 is physical process reliability. It is only way down at number 4 that we even start worrying about digital concerns like data privacy.
If an IT security control, let's say a really aggressive antivirus scan or an active vulnerability probe, if that threatens the reliability of a process or the safety of a human being in any way, that control simply cannot be implemented. Protecting human life outweighs protecting data every single time. I want to leave you with this final, vital thought straight from our sources. The most dangerous OT security program is one that looks comprehensive on paper, but has never been stress tested against a realistic adversary scenario in an actual plant environment. It is a brilliant mic drop warning. You can have all the fancy frameworks, the zones, and the passive scanners in the world, but if they haven't been truly tested against the messy reality of your physical plant, you're just operating on assumptions. So I'll ask you, is your facility's defense actually resilient, or does it only look secure on paper? Keep learning, keep questioning everything, and I'll see you on the next Explainer.